The following is a 4-minute Q&A segment after the webinar held November 2019.
We just welcome your call. We can help with compliance guidance issues. We can help with expense analysis on the structure of your vendors and your managers. We're happy to help look at the managers in your portfolio. That's a core area of expertise for us. And then, of course, we can look at governance practices you have to help you mitigate any potential liabilities you may have from, for example, piercing the corporate veil. In terms of whether there's a trade-off or whether this is worth doing, when we're looking at expense structures, for example, we find that the fees we charge are generally completely recouped by the investor within a year because we generally identify cost savings. So if you were a private investor, you'd say that's a fantastic rate of return. But that's it. And that's what we do. Think about us as your special purpose team for any matters that it may arise. And again, we welcome your phone call. Phone calls are free. And I'll pass it back to Tom and to David.
Yeah, David, I think we had one question that came in. If you do you have that question?
Yeah, we got a question by email before the onset, and it had to do with if the bishop of the diocese is the chair of the foundation, basically, how does that work under corporate piercing the corporate veil scenario? And I would say that by way of response, touched on this a little. I think it would be important in that situation to make sure, one, that you've had a rigorous look at all the various indicia of separateness that exist between the foundation and the diocese. So that really means a pretty rigorous inventory. Overall board composition, how much overlap is there of key decision makers in the diocese with the foundation board? Obviously, there will be some. And so one is a key inventory of all the overlaps. But the other thing I would suggest, and it has to do with two things, the duty of care and record keeping. I think you would be well advised, to have the bishop be other than the chair, right? To have an independent chair of the foundation board. That's I think critically important for piercing the corporate veil. More to the point, and this is a little nuanced, but it's key, and Tom touched on it. You'll want to make sure that you're keeping appropriate minutes and records of decisions, which is to say, not too detailed, but detailed enough. You want to make sure that the people sitting around the foundation board in an appropriate, effective way discharge their duty of care by challenging each other, by raising the appropriate questions, and having those kind of discussions and deliberations documented appropriately. There's an art to minute taking, but as important as it is, and some of you know that CBIS, we co-sponsored the first national convocation of Catholic diocesan foundations, and we had Cardinal Sarah give the keynote about how Catholic foundations operate from the heart of the church and advance the mission. And so, as I said in my remarks, one can't let the independence tail wag the ecclesial dog, so to speak, but you'll want to make sure that there's appropriate independence, of course, of the foundation from the diocese, and having the ordinary as the chair of the foundation board is not recommended in our view. So having the right people around the board table, having them discharge their duties appropriately, and doing an inventory of all the indicia of separateness is pretty important.